let some people in. I usually have an assistant that's doing all this, but that's Shannon, who's been emailing you, and she had her second COVID shot today, so
okay, no worries.
All right, awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you everyone for joining. My name is Carmen. I'm Director of Development here at NAMI Greater Houston, and we're here for our weekly Tuesday Talk series. Today we have a very special guest, Mr. Jay Barnett, and we're gonna go dive right into it. Jay, I know that you have been a big passionate on mental health, and I love having a men's perspective, right?
Yeah.
Especially within the African-American community. And so I wanted to kind of let everyone know, just to brief introduce yourself and who you are, and then we can get started with some of the questions.
Absolutely. My name is Jay Barnett, former professional athlete, but now marriage and family therapist associate, also a mental health coach as well, author and speaker. And so that's a little bit about myself. Being a Black male therapist over the past year during this pandemic, and also with the social injustice that has continued to occur, unfortunately, has really been humbling. It's been a great opportunity for myself to be seen for Black men and for Blacks all together to have representation in the field of mental health. So it's a great honor to be able to be in this space.
I think one thing, when people think of mental health and therapy, it's kind of, we all know it's a taboo subject, but I also think it has like an automatic image of where people go. What would you tell someone, or what would you tell the public, that misperception, so we can change those mindsets as far as what is mental health when it comes to even getting therapy?
Right. When you break down the term mental health is associated with three elements of who we are as human beings that make up, whether it's emotional, mental, physical, and some would say spiritual. And so I like to bring context to that, because your mental health is associated with those three phases of your life. Where's your emotional state? Where's your physical health? And also where's your mental state as well? And those three elements are associated with your quality of living. And your quality of life is going to be based from one of those three elements. And that's what mental health is really centered around, the quality of life that you have, but also it's centered around how do you manage those three phases. And of course, you have people who talk about mental health issues, but it's separate from the mental health. Now, a poor mental health can cause a mental health issue. So I want to clarify that. So when you have issues and when you have discrepancies in one of those three phases of mental health, emotional, physical, and mental. So when you have the breakdown of your emotions and you don't have a healthy space to process, whether you have your physical health is failing, that can cause also some mental health issues as well, which lead into the depression, the anxiety, and those things that we become familiar with over the past year. And then you have mental health disorders, which are centered around eating disorder, personality disorders, and also OCD and different things like that. And the more extreme are the schizophrenia and the bipolar and things of that nature.
Right. Thank you for breaking that down, because I feel that the term just mental health has kind of fallen into these categories that you mentioned, and people kind of put it all in one, but there's different facets of it. So I appreciate you kind of breaking that down. So now let me ask you, what has mental health meant to you, and how did you even become, getting into this realm of being not only a therapist, but you're also kind of your mission is to empower and inspire, right? So you have different programs within within what you provide to the community. So I'll just ask you again, what does overall mental health mean to you, and how has that helped you?
Absolutely. For me, mental health it's a personal mission of mine, because I know the struggles I dealt with after professional sports, and being able to find how to identify myself outside of football. And I have my own battles with depression. And as so many have seen me share, whether it's on a national interview or whether something local, I've talked about my struggles with suicide, and actually been a 2-time suicide survivor. So for me, mental health is very personal because I learned that my depression was also a symptom, or should I say, attached to a childhood experience that I had. So for me, mental health has been very personal. I didn't want to really be an advocate. I wanted to be someone that can help others foster into that space as well, and especially from the sports arena, because in the NFL, most of the clinicians are white, and it's a very challenging space to have someone come in and actually share if there's no relatability or compatibility in life issues. And for me, when I went back to school in 2015, I felt it was my divine purpose. I felt that it was my calling and my mission to not only be a representation as a Black man, but also to be a voice to change that stigma for us as African Americans, because for so many of us, mental health and having the talk about depression was very taboo. You didn't talk about the things that you deal with. You didn't talk about the things that you struggle. And for so many, they've lived in this box where they've had to sort of repress and suppress. And I have a thing that I said, when you live in a suppressed state and you have to repress your emotion, this is what causes a depression state. And I want to clarify for many that depression is not necessarily a diagnosis. It is a symptom. It is a symptom to a greater root issue and a greater cause. And I think for me, learning that my parents' divorce had such an impact on me. And for many of us have already experienced a lot of childhood trauma, a lot of childhood issues, whether it's abuse, abandonment, rejection, whether it's seeing your parents in jail. And this falls under the line of ACE, which is adverse childhood experiences, which are traumatic experiences that someone experienced between the ages of 5 through 18. And I didn't realize that that was a very traumatic experience for me that led to the cutting, that led to the isolation, that led to the withdrawal. And then as an adult, it showed up again. And so my mission is to not only get people to start talking, but to get people in therapy to help them to understand that therapy allows you to connect the dots to the roots, but then too, it empowers you with the proper tools. That way you don't find yourself in these unhealthy coping mechanisms.
Right. And I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a lot of individuals that do not kind of connect the past, right? The past kind of catches up to you, and this is when these issues come about. So I think you hit it in the nail there with, in therapy, this is when it all comes out and you finally recognize and you finally admit the issues and the pain that's something that's been kind of accumulating over time. So let me ask you this. When did you realize, as far as your personal growth, as an adult, looking back into these life struggles that had affected you? Because you probably didn't notice it until a particular moment, right?
Right. Yeah. I didn't notice it probably until late 20s and early 30s, especially where I had my last suicide attempt and I actually survived it. That's when I realized, like, okay, I need to get some help, because part of my challenge was, how do I identify myself after something that I've identified myself by? Football was a coping mechanism for me. It wasn't necessarily that I wasn't going to get paid, I wasn't going to have a career. This was my life survival, space. It was where I felt safe. It was where I felt like I can thrive and I can really hold on. And as for many, especially Black athletes, sports has become a safe haven for us. And for me, I've been in therapy and been on my journey for probably almost 10 years now. So, and then also I'm a therapist that have a therapist. So if you are in the mental health field and you don't have a therapist, I'm going to question not only your self-care routine, but I'm also going to question how do you stay, on the top of your own mental process. So it's one of those things where, as a Black man, I wanted to see how can I begin to fix not what was done, but how can I begin to fix my thought process. So, when you look at thought processes, there are neural connections to our brains, and they become strengthened over time when something empowers that by making you feel that this is true. And many times the things that we've experienced, whether it was a bad relationship, whether it was abuse from a parent or a family member, whether it was you grew up in foster care, our thoughts begin to dictate how we believe, and our belief system attaches to our brain. And this begins to impact our mental health because it's impacting your view of yourself. The great Alvin Adler, which is the pioneer therapist, he said, it is not our experiences that determine our life. It is our beliefs about what we have experienced. So when the thing about therapy is it's to unlock everything that you were before the trauma. Because when we have trauma, when you have these experiences, it, in so many ways, it forces you to develop a maladaptive persona to where I've now been hurt. I never want to be hurt again. So now I draw up this wall. So now I become passive aggressive. Now I develop this withdrawn behavior. Now there's this narcissistic behavior that's developed. Now there's these other disorders that begins to attach themselves because rather than addressing the root, you just create another personality to defend and justify your behavior. This is why mental health is so important, because every time your brain experiences trauma, it rewires your brain wave and your brain activity.
So let me ask you this. So a lot of people shy away from therapy. They look at therapy almost like the end of the road, right? Like when you're really, but there's also positive, engagement when it comes to therapy. There's people that like I remember I went through a very bad breakup that led me to therapy. And it actually, over time, as I realized, it wasn't even about the breakup. It was about other things that I was doing. But therapy became something I look forward to every week. So let's talk about, you mentioned to break the stigma on mental health conditions and really speaking about seeking help. What are those top conversations to even start the dialogue? What is, let's talk about it, but what are we going to talk about in the beginning? And then the second part of that question is, when you're in therapy, a person that has never gone and has that negative stigma, so it's already kind of hesitant about going there, what would be some kind of, best practices or tips that we can share with the public on that?
So I want to give this. The therapy experiences is always going to be determined by the therapist.
Got it.
Number one, your therapy experience is going to be determined by the therapist. It's going to be determined by their level of openness. And I'm not talking about sharing personally, but how open do you make the client feel in that space? One of the things that I would do often is what we call is I will personally disclose, right? And then as a therapist, I am conveying to the client that I want to disclose to where I may share a part of myself to help them to feel comfortable and relaxed about something where they feel stuck in. Also in that space, what type of experience or what type of environment are you creating for the client? One of the reasons why I wear a hoodie or I wear my crew neck shirt that says heal and I dress very casual, because what I've noticed is that this helps people to feel more comfortable. When you show up in a suit and tie, you show up and you kind of dressed up, it makes people feel uptight. And I work with a lot of teenagers. I work with a lot of professional athletes. I work with a lot of high performance individuals and the CEOs and from all walks of life. And I always want them to feel comfortable and they don't feel that they're going to be judged. Because if people feel like you're going to judge them, they're going to clam up.
Right.
They're not going to be open. So you may come into my office and I'm playing some hip hop music, right? And when you walk in, I'm a huge fan of 90s hip hop. So you may come in there and you like, oh, that's Wu-Tang. And you know what I mean? You
right.
What it does immediately, it relaxes the client, and I can see their entire body language just relax. Once I now have you relax, it's not about what I'm trying to get out of you. It is now what I want you to get out of this process.
Got it.
Most people think therapy is you're telling me all of your business. I'm not trying to know your business. Now, do I want to have an understanding of what you've experienced and what you've gone through in your past? Because past experience, past traumas, past events helps me to understand current and present behavior.
Yep.
So in that, I am able to walk with you through this process. Therapy is not a one-time thing where you come in and you just kind of like you take this red pill or this blue pill and you're fixed. This is why my consistent quote is healing is a journey, because
Exactly.
we're all healing from something. And
Mm-hmm.
wholeness is the destination. And here is the thing: wholeness is a destination that you're constantly and you continue to pursue. Because as you continue to heal and as you continue to open up these different, some may call Pandora's boxes, it helps you to understand that it's not the abuse that determines how you live your life. It's your thoughts about yourself in the abuse. And if I can separate the two, that way you don't see yourself as the experience. And it
Mm-hmm.
takes a very intuitive therapist to connect the dots. Because if I come in with a lot of clinical and I make it very technical, you don't receive that. So one of
Right.
the things that I feel like it's a God-given gift that God has gave me is to take my own life experiences, my education as a therapist, as a PhD student, and to take insight and woven it in to where people feel like it's just a conversation. That if you share something with me that you never share something with someone else, you don't feel the shame. Most
Right.
people are afraid to go to therapy is because they are ashamed. But that's all of us.
That's
Because
all.
I have to,
Right.
because, okay, if you really find out that I've been married all of these years and I have these questions about my sexuality, how are you going to look at me? Because this is a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel like I am the CEO of a major company, but everybody really don't know that I battle the imposter syndrome, that I don't think I know what I need to know. That if I go out and show people that I am really not as confident as you think. So when you enter into the clinical and the therapy space, it is for you to unpack and to become unglued so you can get the freedom you need by releasing that.
And I think that's exactly how a lot of people feel is that fear. We go back into that stigma of, you know, portraying something, right? Not because exactly what you said. And I feel that sometimes people think of individuals with certain, you know, issues like that they have to look a certain way, but everyone has life struggles. Everyone has some type of pain, some type of hurt. And I think sometimes people kind of need that reminder. So we have a question here as far as, hold on one second, I just lost it here. With with mental health being such a taboo subject in our Black families, what are the challenges that you're facing in getting that message across? I know you talked about you're talking to adolescents and teens. What would be something that we can address, especially with men of color that are just flat out do not believe in therapy?
Well, one of the things is it hasn't really been a challenge for me because I've been consistent with my message. I've been consistent with my page from the day that we did the Breakfast Club, and the first time that from the day that Charlemagne saw the heel hoodie, the entire movement just blew up. What it did was it normalized people having these conversations, because you got to see a Black man expressing his thoughts and expressing his feelings. I think one of the things is that for so long, men in generally haven't had a space to really have these type of conversations. And
Right.
so women who I am so encouraged and inspired by, women have the spaces. You know, you see them having the spaces on the talk shows. You see them having the spaces in empowerment events. You know, women come together, they got wine and they got nights where they get together and they,
Right.
oh my God, you know, women have been creating these liberating moments. And that
Mm-hmm.
hasn't been the same as men, because many of us have been led to believe that I don't think you guys have any emotions. And what I have done is I have neutralized and normalized men expressing in a very healthy way, because most women have experienced men only expressing through anger. Most families, communities have only seen when he acts out. But what I come to really bring clarity on is that this acting out is a cry for help. So as men are seeing me share, and seeing these moments in the media is helping them to feel human again. And men have to see other men having these conversations. They have to see men talking about it. It's the same way in sports. I use this analogy often, especially when I'm talking to athletes, is Michael Jordan doesn't jump from the free throw line if Dr. J never did it. Right. So here's what Dr. J did when he did that. He made it possible. Because I saw him, I now can process it that if I try hard enough that I someday can do that. Mm-hmm. So translate this into mental health. If you see brothers like myself talking about depression, talking about suicide ideation, Charlemagne talking about anxiety, irrational anxiety, rational anxiety, talking about having OCD, talking about being abused, talking about men being molested. When you see men having those conversations, what you see is you see a bunch of brothers begin to say like, wow, whew, I'm not the only one.
Right.
And that's what we have to see in order to get men to feel comfortable in that space. Because what men is seeing is that brother's not judging me. Mm-hmm. And then two, you're seeing a brother who my masculinity is intact. You're seeing a brother who's able to share without fear. You're seeing a brother who's able to share without judging and without critiquing. Because most time when men come into my office, they often say, and Jay, when I have tried to open up and share my feelings, there's pushback.
Right.
And if there's pushback on men when they open and share, I guarantee that man is going to shut down. Because many of us have not been heard in our families. Chris Rock has something. Chris Rock has this saying, and I came across it a few days ago, and somebody asked me what I thought about it. He said, women, children, and dogs are loved unconditionally, and men are loved based on the condition that they're able to provide something.
Oh, that's very powerful.
Very powerful.
And it's true.
Very powerful.
It's sad and it's true. Yeah.
Very powerful. So when you have a brother that says, man, I don't feel confident, and if you're dating somebody, or if this is your son, if this is your brother, if this is your friend, when that is released, you now have a responsibility. Mm-hmm. How are you going to protect that space?
Right.
Because if he feels that you're now going to judge his masculinity, you're now going to question his manhood, you're going to question his sexuality, you have now just told him, I don't hear you.
And he's not valued enough to be heard.
And he's not valued to be heard.
Right.
For the same reason, these unhealthy social messages that we see, happy wife, happy life. What does that say to the man? It tells him that your happiness doesn't matter. But if you keep your wife happy, that's all you need to do, my brother. These things are unhealthy.
They are.
Because the man's happiness is just important as the wife. But beyond marriages, men in general, and what I'm wanting these brothers to understand is that, brother, you have more than anger to express. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anger is really a secondary emotion, and it's a very healthy emotion when it's expressed in a healthy way. So we have sent so many conflicted messages because when the man is angry, we say, oh, he's mad. But okay, right. If we can create the space that says, man, I know you're mad, but what are you mad about? Mm-hmm. Talk to me.
So let's talk about that, because I feel that there's also us as women, sometimes we don't know how to approach unless it gets to that escalated level, right? And then everything comes out. So then it goes back into proper positive communication, how to approach something, how to reach a man and ask them, I noticed X, Y, and Z, how can I help you? So let's just talk about positive communication when it comes to, because a man's going to be hesitant about opening up because of all the reasons that you talked about. What are some things that we as women can help that individual, that male individual, especially Black men, to be able to kind of open up and share their emotion in a positive light?
One of the tips that I give out often is listen to understand rather than to respond. Mm-hmm. Listening to understand rather than to respond. So many men have not been heard because either they were raised by a mom that depended upon them to be the man of the house as a young boy. So this man has learned to function from what he can provide rather than who he is as a person.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is in that space, sometimes sitting with him while he is processing is a form of support, meaning that, for an example, I'm just going to create the name Daryl. If Daryl is bothered by something and the woman says, Daryl, what's wrong? And he cannot share what is wrong, sometimes a positive reinforcement that you're there to communicate effectively is says, hey, Daryl, I don't know what's wrong, but I'm willing to sit here until you feel that you can share. And I'm okay with it if you want to sit in silence. So now what you just told him is you have just validated his feelings, but you've also validated his silence.
Mm-hmm.
Men don't process the same as women. Most women process through talking. Most men process silence. Most of them process when they're trying to work through their thoughts because, again, our primary function is not to talk about a thing.
Right.
This is why you ask your brother, how you doing? Oh, I'm good. Brother got a leg hanging off. He's got an arm hanging off. Brother, how you doing? I'm good. Because we've been programmed to say that we're good, because if I say that I'm bad, you're going to view me as that I'm not a man, or you're going to view me as this, are you man enough? And the reality of it is that I want brothers to understand, take off your cape, my brother.
Right.
You're not Superman. The reality of it is that Superman was really Clark Kent.
Mm-hmm.
And the Clark Kent is that you're able to be a human and to feel your emotions, and not that you're trying to put on this cape and you put on this front and you go out into the world and you get beat up and you come home, your cape is full of holes, but you can't connect to the woman because you won't allow her to see that you're really Clark Kent. And there's nothing wrong with being Clark Kent.
Right.
I know we all like to put on our capes and show the S on our chest and feel like we can take on the world, but the reality is that we can't leap a building with one single bound. We're not faster than a speeding bullet. The reality of it is that you really do feel pain.
Mm-hmm.
And that as you're feeling pain, to go enter into another relationship creates an unhealthy pattern. To go turn up the alcohol, to go smoke the weed, to go turn on some porn are all unhealthy coping mechanisms. And really, you need to release it and talk about it.
Right. Those are all cover-ups of the true pain of what you really need to find, right? And those are all mechanisms that people kind of go to, or resources that they feel is essentially just numbing the pain. So we have a question here for you. Hold on, let me see if I can find it here. What would be let me see. What are some of the services that Jay provides? So I was going to ask you that later on, but I know you have great online coaching sessions. So let's talk about what you provide, mental health sessions as well, that you added that.
Yes.
So let's share that with the public.
So I do provide virtual counseling, and we have to call it coaching because technically you cannot provide counseling, quote unquote,
right.
technically over state lines and different things like that. So I have created this virtual space where individuals have been able to get healing. They've been able to work and get a space where they can process. It's funny because about 2 to 3 years ago, when I was going through my supervision process in my internship, my supervisor and I had a conversation about virtual therapy. And at this time, listen, nobody wanted to talk about it. Right. And he literally said to me, Carmen, Jay, I just don't think it will work. I said, Mike, this is going to be the thing moving forward. And Carmen, I kid you not. My team built a virtual platform in 2019. And I was working in private practice because I'm here in Dallas.
Right.
And I was going into the office and I told them, I said, yo, man, I'm building this virtual platform because I really think this is a way. I said, I don't think people will be coming into the office for some reason. I don't know whether it's a premonition or whether
right.
It was, you know what I mean? I don't know
what
it was.
2020
then
hit.
all of a sudden,
right.
And all of a sudden 2020 hit. And here I was out front of it, creating these interviews where I was talking to my celebrity friends, Layla Ali, Christian Keys, Essen Atkins, and we did a mental health awareness event every week on social media where I interviewed one of these celebrities, because what I wanted to do is I wanted to normalize these conversations. I wanted to normalize that we were in a pandemic, and I had no idea that the George Floyd incident would happen. And when George Floyd incident happened, all of a sudden there was this acceleration of mental health, because what happened was there was a need for Black people to begin to process the secondary trauma from seeing this man knee on this man for 8 minutes, and then this man died. So that sparked this conversation like, yo, we need to talk about this. And this is real, because only so much trauma that you can ingest, and you keep saying, I'm okay. Oh, I'm gonna just go work out. Oh, I'm gonna just go to the happy hour. You know what I mean? I'm gonna go for a run. I don't care how many runs you go for, until you can process your thoughts, your trauma, your issues, your stuff, your shit, and excuse me, my expression, until you can work through that stuff, man, it's gonna be right there in your face.
So I think that that's one thing. I mean, looking back, where it's been a little bit, right at the year mark, a little bit over a year of when pandemic hit. And I think that really started kind of that open conversation that the need was there, so now like you're saying, I feel like the virtual connection, coaching, listening to therapy sessions, listening to mental health tips, that's become a little bit more a norm, that you see it more. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because at the end of the day, we're all going to deal with that. And I think that virtual space is something that, you were a year earlier before it kind of hit. So I think that was something really good. Let me see. I had another comment for you here. So I know you have something that you have been, I think you're either, let me see. As a former NFL player, As a former NFL player, do you still go back and talk to a lot of your friends that you played football with and kind of assist them now with your services? Someone just asked.
Yes, I do. We actually, I just partnered with the NFL Players Association, and we're getting ready to do a virtual conference for athletes, where myself, Russell Wilson and his team, we're getting ready to do a virtual conference. And it's been something where I've always been passionate to go back and work with the athletes. A few years ago, the NFL brought me in to talk to 25 of the therapists and clinicians that works for each NFL team. And I was able to kind of give them some different methods on how to approach Black athletes, knowing that right now the NFL is 75% African American. And so what I was able to do was not only educate them, but also provide some different methods of connection to some different clinical suggestions. Because one of the things is that it's hard for me to go into a space where I don't feel like the individual will be able to relate to me. And then two, you have to create the energy, because as a therapist, whatever energy that you have to, it's going to be projected onto the client. And so many people have reached out to me like, man, my therapist is judgmental. And I'm just kind of like, what? So many of them saying, man, my therapist don't talk back to me. I'm just like, oh my God. And just to hear about the experiences. And so for me, the NFL has been very supportive of the work that I do, the NFLPA, because one of the things that we're learning that these are still people.
Right.
They're just playing a game. They're still human beings. And then the unfortunate of it is that there's not enough Black male clinicians in that space to work with these athletes, to connect and to relate with these athletes. Because you have an athlete that gets a $20 million contract, but he's still battling the depression and the anxiety that has been following his entire life. Now, however, this is what we've learned to do as athletes, and as so many people, and beyond athletes, we all do it in our own profession. We try to outperform our trauma.
Right.
That's what we do. We're gonna go in. I'm gonna become the top salesman of the year, right? I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna go buy me this $80,000 car. I'm gonna go build this $250,000 house. We do all of these things to outperform the trauma, just so we don't have to deal with our real issues. So now you take a 20-year-old kid that enter into a space where he knows how to play football, but he don't know how to do life. Because coaches are not teaching that. And this is why mental health is so important in sports, because I don't want these guys just to be viewed as these athletic specimen that can run and jump and catch and throw. I want these guys to understand that your mental health is going to determine the quality of life off the field. The field is just a small aspect of an athlete's life.
Absolutely. So, you know, I follow you on Instagram, and I'm very drawn to your passion to talking to young Black males, right? What are some of the questions while you're in these sessions and they're, you know, new to this kind of, you know, empowerment and conversations that you share with them? What are some things now that we have a lot of people that might have a son or a cousin or a family member that's young and kind of troubled? You know, what's the approach when it comes to talking to an adolescent? Because I know their approach is completely different in how they listen.
Yeah, one of the approaches is asking the questions, what do you think about the world today? What do you think about George Floyd? You know, what do you think about yourself as a young Black man? And these are some of the questions that I lead in with to create the space, because I want to hear what their thoughts are. I grew up in an era, I'm an 80s baby, so I grew up in an era where children were seen and not heard. And this has created a lot of dysfunctional in us as 80s baby. A lot of us can't communicate effectively. So many adults that I know that are 80s baby are passive aggressive because they were not provided a space to be heard. So what happened is, since I don't know how to say something, I don't say something at all, but my body language is saying everything. And so one of the things is that I want these young men to feel like what you have to say is not right or wrong. It's valid.
Right.
Once I validate how they feel, this now helps them or encourage them to keep expressing. And before we even get into what the issue is, I'm trying to get to know the person, because the whole person is showing up with and if hopefully if there's some therapists watching and clinician, I don't care what the issue is within the first 2 to 3 sessions. I want to know about the person. As I get to know about the person, that's going to connect me to the root cause that has manifested the issue or the behavior. Because so many times, you know, parents are like, oh, he's acting out. Like, I don't really care about that. I want to know what's causing him to act out.
Exactly.
Like right now, one of the biggest challenges that a lot of parents are having, my kid is not making A's and B's. He or she is falling. They are slow to turn in their work. And I'm literally telling parents, Mom, Dad, what do you think you would do if you're a 14-year-old kid in the midst of a pandemic? You thrive off of having your social circle. You thrive off of having, you know, your connection. What do you think that you would do if you was 14 and 15 years old? These kids are struggling. It's difficult for them, man. It's tough, because I can imagine, you know, I can only do 3 to 4 people a day sitting in my own house. I couldn't imagine logging on to a class from 8 to 4 all day. Now, I've obtained 2 masters in a non-traditional setting, but it wasn't an all-day thing. And so you're asking a child to be locked in at a computer, and all of a sudden you still have chores and all those different things. And I'm telling parents, I'm not changing your parenting style, but you are going to have to make some adjustments.
Right.
And the adjustment is because they're in their own mental process. It's depressing, you know, for these kids to sit at home. So, you know, I ask a lot of the kids that I work with, like, what do you think about this pandemic? And this is why I love teenagers. They're so honest.
They are. They're very unfiltered.
Oh my God, I love it. Adults lie to you all day. Kids are gonna tell you the truth.
Very valid point. Yes.
They're gonna tell you the truth all day. These kids, I'm like, man, so what do you think about the pandemic? And I had a client, a young kid, he says, Mr. J, I freaking hate it, man. He's like, it sucks.
Right.
And I'm like, tell me more about why this sucks. And he starts laughing, and for that moment, you can just tell it was a weight lifted off of him, because I just was asking him what he thought about it, you know? And from there, we then move into the feelings of it. How has this made you feel?
Right.
Have you been able to connect with your friends? Have you
Mm-hmm.
been able to stay in touch with them? Those things. So I would encourage people, and especially when you're dealing with young males, white, black, Asian, Hispanic, always ask them what are their thoughts about something. When you ask a young man his thought about something, you're now investing into his thought process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when he feels like he can share his thought, this is going to make him feel like he can open up to you and begin to speak and share.
We had someone left the comment about if NAMI provides anything. We do provide NAMI basics. And I don't know who the person one that left that comment on our Facebook page. NAMI basics is basically a class. It's for parents, guardians, and other family caregivers. This is for age 22 and younger who are experiencing mental health symptoms. So this is a course that's also available in Spanish and in English. So if you guys visit our website, that's something that we provide. So NAMI basics, that's a program that we provide as well. So Jay, as we wrap up, I know you have another meeting, so I want to be respectful of your time. How can our viewers reach you? What's on your website, right?
Yes, my website, my online virtual website is kjbcoaching.com, kjbcoaching.com.
Got
And
it.
so we're booked I'm booked for the rest of the month, but the calendar opens back up in mid-May. So if someone is looking to get on the calendar, they can go there and place. They fill out the inquiry sheet and kind of ask you what your goals are, what's a presenting issue, and then we can work from there. But I also want to encourage those that are watching is that therapy is very liberating and it's a very gruesome process. You're probably going to leave the session feeling worse than you did when you came in. However, that's a part of the process. When we begin to dig up things that we have allowed, and I'm not going to say that we've allowed, but just as things that you didn't even know about, you know what I mean? Or you didn't even know the effects that it had on you until you get into therapy, until we begin to look at patterns. That's what we study. We study patterns, and we begin to look at not what's wrong with you, but how something went wrong within you that has caused this adverse issue. You know what I mean? And so I want people to get, because sometimes people get in therapy and just like, oh my God, this sucks. Yes, it's going to suck. It's going to be brutal. My first therapy session, it was, oh my God. I always tell this story. Like, it took me 3 sessions for me to open up.
Right.
And
It
on the
takes some
third
time.
session, I was crying. I was crying like a baby.
Yeah.
But the tears were so liberating,
I was going to
because
say it is a very liberating feeling.
for the first time, I was able to let go of the pain that I was carrying. And I didn't care how much football I played. I didn't care how many people I hit. I didn't care how many touchdowns I scored when I was playing in the arena league. And none of that didn't matter. None of that was liberating. That was just kind of like, it's all right. But when I was able to release the thoughts that I had about my father from the divorce that I was carrying in football and in life, it allowed me to see from a different perspective. Because so many times we take the event or the experience everywhere we go. And here's what happens. When we do that, we create a cognitive distortion. And a cognitive distortion, and when an individual perceive their reality inaccurately. And so what happened is that it causes an over generalization, where we make everything becomes what we've experienced. So now we've been abused. We look at everyone as an abuser, rather than working on the thoughts that we had about the abuse that we had to endure. So hopefully this conversation and talk has helped people, help individuals to kind of comb through and unpack some different things. Also, rest in peace to Dante Wright, the young black man that was taken by the officer. And I just want to send this encouragement out to everybody. I don't care what race you are. Take social media breaks. Take media breaks. The news is a lot right now, whether it's pandemic, whether we're talking about a police killing, whether you're talking about Johnson & Johnson having to put their vaccine on pause. It's all a lot, man. It's a lot. So please take a mental health break and take care of you, because if you're not good, nothing else around you will be good.
So talking about that, before I let you go, just a few more minutes on May for Mental Health Month, right? What do you have coming up? What's next for you for next month? Because I know you have a busy schedule, so.
So we have the Just Heal Bro virtual tour with myself and Russell Wilson and his team that we're going to be doing for all Black and brown males. This is going to be free, open to these young guys. We also have a tour on the East Coast where we're going to be doing a host of interviews talking about the mental health awareness. And also I have several engagements that are booked in Houston, in Jamaica. We're doing a 2-day conference on mental health matters. So May is going to be a very busy month for us, but I'm looking forward to it. And again, I'm thankful for you guys inviting me. I'm always indebted to the people of Houston and to come and share my expertise and my insight. And again, I cannot stress enough, your mental health matters. It really does. And when I say that, people, I'm talking about your physical and mental and your emotional states. Those 3 elements matter because they're going to determine the quality of life that you have.
We appreciate that. We'll definitely need to connect when we're in Houston. Somebody just made a comment on our Facebook. We are having our NAMI walks, Greater Houston. It's Saturday, May 22nd. That's our United Day of Hope. So we'll be posting more information on all our social media. So if anything, that is a day for you can go take a walk, breathe some air, and represent what mental health means for all of us. So we'll definitely get that going for everyone, and it's information on our website. Jay, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And
yes, ma'am. Thank you, Carmen.
We will be in contact. And I need to get that shirt. I need to get that shirt up.
Yes. So
somebody mentioned about the shirt.
Yeah. So let me give you the website where you can get the shirts. You can get the shirts at healgirlheal.com. Healgirlheal.com. And we do have some tank tops coming out for this summer. So Carmen, you can cut them up and do a little cute photo shoot in it.
I will. All right. I got the website now. Thank you, Jay.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll see you guys next week on Tuesday Talks.